Welcome to another episode of Racquet Society. Today, our guest is Mahir Cetiz, composer, pianist, multi musician. He gave us a lovely list, so we are going to talk a little bit about his tracks now. Mahir, tell us a little bit about your playlist. What made you choose these tracks here? It's a quite
Well,
eclectic kind of like combination. Um, how do some of these things come in there? So just yeah, tell us a little bit about it.
yeah, first of all, thank you for hosting me today and having my playlist. In fact, this playlist is sort of a distillation of a longer playlist. I know it took a while for me to get back to you with a playlist in which I had tracks about like 25-minute long pieces, and then I had to come up with some, associations and what would sort of, reflect the other things, at least sort of allusions or, some sort of distant relationships. But this is basically some of the things I am enjoying listening. I find a lot of, not only musical inspirations, but also makes me think about my experience with sound, my experience with some concepts that lyrics talk about. And yeah, so let me go one by one. I actually have some sort of, don't we all actually have personal history with what we listen to? But these are like, some of them are pieces that I go back again and again, but most of them are very new. So I'll just go through the list as it appears. Aşki by Süleyman Ergüner is Şahne improvisation. Ney is an instrument, it's a flute, and I have one here. It's a reed, just a reed, very simple reed, a Middle Eastern flute instrument, a extremely primitive instrument, and that's the whole beauty of it. And you have all these different sizes, and Shahne, which means like the head ney, is the largest one, which is usually used for very somber and very sort of deeply theologically deep, philosophically deep topics in Sufi music. And Süleyman Ergüner is one of the most prominent ney players from Turkey, along with his brother Kutsi Ergüner, and their father was an important ney player too. So I'm actually digging a lot into makam these days because I've been always into it, but this one actually sort of uh, surpasses all these, like segmentation of music or what maqam it is in, what it is. It really has a very hypnotizing flow. So this album, actually, I found out about that in 2003, believe it or not, and it was recorded in late 90s. And this is something that I go back again and again. Not only, well, we can talk more in detail about what's going on, what really draws me there. But yeah, not only the melody, but the timbrely. It's so rich. It's a world. It's an own world. So the second one is Consumed, a piece and song from Onirigen, Hypnos by Onirigen. Onirigen is a musician called Mario Diaz de Leon. I don't know if you ever heard this guy. He is a New York composer, and he's my very good friend. And I'm actually sort of discovering his work again after years. So this is from about I believe 8 or 9 years ago. It's a solo album. I mean, he came out as Onirigen as a musician, solo electronics. He's playing the guitars. He's preparing all the patches in the computer, and he's playing also some analog synthesizers. And he continues to produce different music. He's actually from metal background. He's a metal artist, and at the same time, classical and no, not classical. I don't like that word. Contemporary art music composer. Um, then Memo Resto Verbi Tui. Oh my God, that is a long one, isn't it? By Josquin Duprez. That I actually came back to it related to Macron, believe it or not. And that is a motet by Josquin, who apparently was leaving his posts. No, not leaving his post. He wrote this motet to remind his boss to pay him for the commission.
Yes.
Yeah, and it actually memorized that verbitui means like remember thy word to your what do you call your
Promise.
yes, yeah. Remember what you promised to your guy or something. So yeah, I'll just talk about it for hours and hours. But anyway, then the next one, Preludes for Piano by Ruth Crawford Seeger for Preludes. To be honest, this is the first time I actually discovered this month. In fact, she had actually 8 preludes in total. 4 preludes is the latter one she wrote in 1927, I believe, with some revisions. And it's really, I think Ruth Crawford Seeger really stands in a very, very special place in the early 20th century music, which is not, I think, recognized as much as it has to be between, modernism and, I would say, relationship with lyricism in the earlier music, but not, I don't want to say it's lyrical music, but it really has a different blend. Domino is a new release by Nicole Atkins. In fact, not a new release. It was released in March for her new upcoming LP. Black Hoodie by Extra Life was a great group. I had the privilege of seeing their last concert at St. Vitus in Brooklyn. Experimental metal band. I find it very hybrid and somewhere in between things. Can't really put my finger on it. Therefore, I put it here. And François Bale, Les Couleurs de la Nuit, that is something that I listen to it from time to time. And I put it without listening again. Then I found out like how my psychological conditioning actually determines if I enjoy this piece or not. And that was interesting. After I sent you the list, 2 days after I listened to it, and I was like, man, I shouldn't listen to this at this hour of the day. It's like,
So you yourself like it or not like it, basically.
yeah, but yeah, definitely. But it also, invites you to a very specific mode of listening.
Yeah.
And you may not be ready for that anytime. But also, this is like one movement of multi-movement piece, acousmatic piece. So that's why I think it should be actually considered in its own context. And Burn the Witch by Radiohead, one of my favorites. I couldn't go without including anything like this. And Johnny Greenwood is one of my, favorite artists of all time. So this is like basically why it is there. But I was actually thinking of putting Yes Close to the Edge. Do you know that one? I'm just all pandemic. I was re-listening again and again and again and again. And I found in this list many things from that. But that is also another 19-minute long track. So
So it didn't make it.
yeah, it didn't make it.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah, they are from different places or different things, or most of them. But I think, yeah, I find some distant or close relationships between them, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, for me, the first half of this playlist are like very concentrated, kind of like timbral explorations of very specific kinds of sounds. And with the ney, I also love the ney. I don't even know that much about ney, but it's such a beautiful sound. I mean, I think it is one of the most beautiful sounding instruments like ever. And I don't know how they how the people who originated this music came up with this idea that there would be so much sort of like breath sound as part of the quality of it. But that to me I find just like so much more moving than a lot of traditional music that doesn't have that element of like human breathing is really a part of the sound. And it actually makes me think a lot about jazz artists in the 20th century and stuff like that, particularly saxophones and things like that, that it started to incorporate very heavily the sound of the breath in the as part of the instrumental sound. It's super fascinating. Maybe you could talk to us more about this music, because it's probably going to be something that maybe the two of you might know more about than maybe a lot of the people that are listening or checking out this interview. And things that stick out to me right away is that there's obviously a harmonic system here that I would love to know more about, that I don't know that much about. And two, there is kind of like a form which is like an exploration of the fundamental of the instrument, and then the first octave or the kind of overblow of the instrument as like a heightened center part of the and I don't know if that's common in this genre, and then a return sort of to the fundamental, and how just something classic like that, it has actually like a very profound kind of emotional effect just to kind of move from this register to this register and back. But I'm curious about what about this. You mentioned a maqam. Is that what you would call the sort of scale or the harmonic system, or does that represent something more broad than that or more specific than that?
Chris, thank you. I think you did it. You sort of summarized it so well. That's going from the fundamentals to the upper, like overblowing and coming back. There's this type of journey, but it's not always the same thing in every maqam. And also the breath sound. I mean, well, in Western music, what we usually see is so much puristic concentration on the pitch content and the clarity of pitch content. As the instruments evolve, this was more of the, how more successfully we could actually eliminate all the other elements, and even like people categorize it as non-musical sounds, musical sounds, and etc. But in many musical cultures, there's this embracing the all other things around the pitch in the sound as the sound property. And I'm not saying that this music is really doing it, but it is sort of natural parts of it. And because, in fact, there is a lot of, breath goes outside of the instrument, but it also is a very close, your lips literally touch to the instrument, and the angle, the shape of your lip, the angle that your head is staying in, that all, changes the pitch. And whenever you change the pitch, what we usually refer as microtonally or inflections, it changes the timbre as well. And it is all, so close, so connected to the body. But maqam is not a scale. In fact, maqam, I'm sorry, it's easy. Do you want to say anything? I just started to talk about maqam, but
my information is much more superficial than yours.
Yeah, but we hear maqam. When we lived in Turkey, we heard maqam all day. I mean, even like call to prayer is in certain maqams. They use similar melodic movements, but maqam means actually place, basically in Arabic. But it is rather than the collection of pitches. It's more than collection of pitches. It's not a scale. It's not. It's more than a mode. It gives you a formula of what that melody should be doing and should be touching, where it should be touching. And this where question we could probably parallel with which pitches, but they don't. There isn't actually. In fact, we are right now working on an article with my colleagues. That's why I'm listening more and more Makam music, and what they call those pitches are like frets, are also called the same name called curtain, you know, curtain. And apparently in some of the medieval and, you know, post-medieval texts, I won't say Renaissance because it doesn't apply to the East that in that way. They talk about curtain as, you know, certain sounds are sort of, you know, or veil, sort of opening the veil to certain place. So there is a lot of mysticism going into like which pitches and which pitch combinations sort of open to somewhere that has transcended them from where we are. And ney is the, you know, one of the greatest instruments that you could really feel that. I think because of the timbral content, because not only pitch wise, but timbrally, you go into a very different sonic sort of sonic space. Like it changes from one tetrachord to another tetrachord, and worlds like are so different. And also, I would say, you know, there's also microtones in this music. But, and, you know, a very dear colleague of mine, Onur Türkmen, first pointed out that for the makers of this music, they are not microtones. They are microtones from the Western music point of view because they are micro. But for that, those are existing spaces, existing points in that continuum. And you said harmonically, because it's interesting, because this is obviously a monophonic music, but it is based on just intonation and mostly just intonation. Therefore, all these, you know, spectral relationships also bring out the main resonance of the instrument a lot. So, and each makam, just like raga and modes in the, you know, ancient sense, is associated with certain sentiments, certain ethos, certain pathos, if you like, and certain time of the day. Yeah, those are the things I can think of. But yeah, but Cezi, you wanna chip in anything? Like
The title has something to do with love because ashk means love actually. And ashki is what exactly, Mahir? It's almost, I want to say, about love is what it should mean.
yeah, yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, it's not directly a Turkish word, but you can sort of like make it up, like with associations, because we have a lot of borrowed words from Arabic and Persian. So you can kind of like guess, basically. So yeah, and I imagine that the kind of like transcendental sort of spiritual love is what is talked about, is
Yeah.
my guess, probably, because this is usually the subject matter of such music. But it's interesting because yeah, it's very hypnotic, and uh, in contrast to the other French composer that you were just talking about, Mahir, François Bail, is that how it is?
Francois Bale, yes.
You were saying that you're not always ready at all hours of the day to listen to that one. I sort of have the feeling that I'm pretty much ready to listen to this one at all hours, actually. It's interesting because it's sort of, even if you're not in that mindset, it sort of like brings you to it, isn't it? There's something about that. Do you remember the Ruth Anderson tracks in your playlist, Chris? They also had that quality for me. That the minute I put those tracks on, I was just like, kind of like something was happening to me, basically, that I had to pay attention. I sort of had the same feeling here. Um,
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I wonder if you might be able to because I mean, again, I think actually the first four tracks of this are very hypnotic. All of them are in different ways, and very precise and very clear and very concentrated in that kind of like timbre that they're kind of expressing, and the world that they create like instantaneously, just like feels like you're in the world, and that you're going to be in the world until as long as the composer or the person who made it wants you to be in that world. Um, but I met Mario once, but I don't know him well. And I admit I should know his music better, actually, because I think it's really interesting. And I don't know a lot of composers who are kind of in this space who are making basically like dark ambient, you know, like borderline. I mean, I've not heard that if he has other music that has drums and things like that, but it reminds me of like black metal and stuff like that from Norway, this track. And but also is trying to achieve something kind of similar, which is this just sort of like really intense timbral hypnotic space, with I'm assuming this is like electric guitar or something. I actually don't even know what the instrumentation is, but through a kind of ritual kind of performance of like these kinds of repetitions and this kind of limited palette, and very successful, I think. But curious what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, with in contrast to Ashki, which is this flowing melodic line, consumed is creating that hypnosis through repetition, but also with the saturation of the sound. Like you are immersed. In both cases, you are immersed with this. In fact, in the on Origin, with the multiple layers, this very textured, granulated sound, and one thing flows to another, but at the same time, it's harmonically so simple, which is not the case in Ashki. But yeah, you're right. There is this very ritualistic approach to, and I think Mario's music always embraces that spiritual, experience of music. And this is actually the album's name is Hypnos anyway. So, and this is the second of the album, second song of the album, and quite in a way psychedelic, crushing distortion in the focus, sort of, of course, brings all these, doom metal, black metal sounds, but also as if you are in it creates the sense of a sort of sense of space. It's a very, like you are entering somewhere once you hear that.
Yeah, I found it interesting when I think it said something like it's from 2013 or something, right? Like from
2012. Yeah.
Okay. Because it, of course, and this kind of music has been now used in the last couple of years as sort of like soundtracks for some of the kind of like, it sounds, the minute I heard it, I was just like Ludwig Göransson, I suppose, because it just like became sort of the thing that he does in the Tenet. Tenet sounds pretty much kind of like a variation of that. It was interesting to see that, Tenet is from this year, right? Or was it 2020? I can't remember, but I mean, it hasn't been
this year.
Yeah, it just came out basically.
Okay, I didn't know.
And the latest Christopher Nolan movie had very sort of like, it's in the same genre basically, the whole thing. And what Göransson writes in general is very much in that genre. I suppose, yeah. Isn't he like Swedish or something, Chris? I suppose he is Swedish.
I think so. Yeah.
There is a connection to that, what you were saying about the Norwegian black metal background, maybe.
Dark ambient, yeah.
Maybe on that, perhaps,
The forest.
Forest and cold. And coldness.
Coldness, for sure.
Darkness, yes.
Darkness and coldness.
I think Just Scan is this the first time we've had a repeat artist? Not the same track, but I would never have guessed if someone had told me that. Who do you think would be the first repeat person on a playlist when we started this, that Just Scan would be the winner? I find that amazing. He's kind of having like a moment. I've a lot of people are like, sending me now, like they're like digging into Just Scan. I wonder why that is. Why do you both think that is? Why do you think Just Scan right now is like Is it have to do with the pandemic, or is it just timeless, or is there something like, what is it about Jascan right now that people are digging?
What do you think, Cetiz?
Well, we know the answer of our last guest who included it, so we are wondering what you think.
Well, first of all, I should say that I'm glad more people are digging into Jascan, so I don't feel alone. I don't know. Apparently, Josquin was like Paul McCartney of his time. That's what I heard. He was actually very popular, and he knew that he was very popular, and he actually set his price based on that, knowledge. And he was, everywhere, all across Europe. Um, but I think there's a reason for that because, I mean, what I find in this one, for example, all these lines are so inviting to sing, and they are at certain parts they are demanding, but it really worth challenge. But at the same time, when you hear the whole architecture, it is just another dimension. I mean, in both linear and vertical dimension, it's really, you start finding all these, different uh, like gems, all, precious, movements that you actually start. It just becomes, for me, it became like, oh, that passage from Memoresto, it became an earworm, and another passage became an earworm, another passage became an earworm. Like, I don't know, but it's so engaging all throughout. Um, and and he actually wrote so many things that were seemingly different from each other, but at the same time they were very similar. It's very interesting. Some people, make the same music, right? Like they write the same music all over the place. But uh, yeah, maybe this is the case, but also it has all these, you have El Grillo, it's like Frottola, this very fun piece, and then you have Milito Gre, which we don't know if it's Josquin or not, by the way. And you have this type of motets. I don't know. He has so many faces, but at the same time, or maybe so many masks, which is put on this very unique face. I don't know. Maybe that's, or maybe it's really, you know, do you think that because of the pandemic also people started to listen more human voice or more this thing? I don't know.
Could be. Yeah, that could be. And something that, like, at first sight kind of like seems like one thing, but then invites you in, and then it is likely for you to find more things in it, whatever that is. I think those things really caught our attention during the pandemic, didn't it? Because there's not much going on, obviously. We can't really engage in kind of stimulating interactions of other sorts. So that's why this sort of music that can be kind of like a well in which you can kind of like dive deeper and deeper. That sort of music, I think, became kind of more appealing now during the pandemic than it was before. And I sort of have the same feeling, for example, for literature, like things that I maybe was kind of shying away from reading before, I don't anymore.
Maybe because we have more time and we know that,
Attention.
like, we don't want to, because we tried, I mean, I tried to do so many things in the pandemic, one thing after another. And like, I was always at some point saying that, oh, I'm trying to just, forget now. I'm just trying to spend time. I don't want to think about the time. But then maybe after that point, we go back to certain things again and again, revisit, re-listen, or commit more time to things. Yeah, that's a good.
I hadn't thought about the human voice angle though. That's really interesting. I just sort of thought, like, off the top of my head, oh, it's because it's old, and it's nice to know that like things survive and that there's a long tradition of things, and that this weird moment we're in is like happened before and it'll happen again, and that these traditions continue and that we're a part of something bigger than ourselves. But I think maybe it could be as simple as it's just nice to listen to people. We've been incredibly isolated, and that's strange. It's very strange. I mean, I'm meeting some of my students I've taught for a whole year. I met one of them for the first time today. It's an incredibly strange situation. But what's really interesting, though, is to compare that with Ruth Crawford Seeger. If you're talking about someone like Josquin, who's like the Paul McCartney of their day, Ruth Crawford Seeger, who's this incredible composer, but also had, due to, the patriarchy, basically, in ridiculous circumstances, doesn't get her due as this brilliant composer, but also is attached to all these super famous American figures, in her periphery, like her, I guess, stepson Pete Seeger and husband Charles Seeger, but this piece, strangely enough, from the 1920s, I think, sounds exactly like a lot of American composers who are making basically post-tonal music right now. Like, there's something about this like American version of post-tonal or atonal music that still retains this like really crystal clear identity and directness that almost sounds like Copeland or something, but like every atmosphere that's created in it has this precision and, I don't want to say simplicity, but clarity about every gesture that to me really sets it apart from European modernism, which is oftentimes very ambiguous, very complex, very, very opaque, very difficult, very gestural, lots of these other kinds of things. And this music is like, it's like classical post-tonal music or something. I mean, I am like completely transfixed by this track. I like love it so much, but I think it's because there's something about like this American version of modernism in it that speaks really like to me personally that I love. And it reminds me a lot of also like teachers I've had and things like that who wrote music in this style, which is kind of post-Bartokian and very beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, thank you for saying that, because I think this is true about other works by her as well. In this case, yes, you have some tonal sonorities which are sort of creating this little rooms within which you actually have all these, atonal gestures or dissonant counterpoint. That was what really him and her in fact, Charles Seeger was so much into it. But I think it always has, her pieces always have this clear trajectory and articulation. Another thing, of course, the string quartets and string quartet third movements, and how, like, on someone's hand from Europe, the main idea could actually become something that evolves towards extreme complexity. She actually takes something and then pays, enough time and whatever is necessary, just cultivates and lets it to grow into somewhere which then becomes sort of a 4-minute long or 6-minute long, whatever that is, experience of going from one place to another. And that is something that I find remarkable. I think, yes, American composers has that, definitely, but I think some has more, I would say, experiential clarity than others, and I think Ruth Crawford is definitely the one of the primary composers of that. Yeah, and it's a shame that I didn't know these piano preludes.
I felt the same myself, actually, because I didn't know it either.
But well, hopefully we'll know more.
Seems to be written quite well for the instrument as well, because I mean, whenever the instrument sounds as good as that means that the person knows what they're doing, obviously.
Oh yeah, she was a good pianist too.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, as far as I remember.
Yeah. And then like the what I think of as the left turn in the playlist here is this Domino track by Nicole Atkins. And now I'm like fully in the world of like True Detective and The Wire, and there's like something about maybe. How did you find this music? Actually, I'm super curious because I'd never heard of Nicole Atkins, and there's obviously a lot of cool stuff in this track. But
Yeah,
how did you find this?
I found out about her like some months ago because of a playlist of a friend of mine
Hmm.
that I was listening, I was following, and started digging into it because it actually had this, very some of my favorite stuff like psychedelic rock. Definitely yes, some yes, um, and soul. Definitely soul music. This ostinato, which ostinatos could be very boring, but some of them so groovy and nice. I liked that, and the lyrics that sort of captivated me. Um, and sort of, I don't know, sort of responded to what I think we are sort of dealing with, which is also the things in this playlist. Those two, like Domino's lyrics and Black Hoodie's lyrics, I think they all talk about this being in between us, trying to find the answer of your next step in life. That sort of existentialist crisis they are both actually pointing towards. And her way of singing, what I really find interesting, and I really am curious what you would think, because most of the new stuff coming out has this very precise way of singing. Either is touched by autotune or sort of made this, very sort of teenagey type of timbre. So she has she doesn't use autotune. She actually, her voice has sort of today's shadow, but at the same time, the background and all the content of the music actually goes beyond that. And that blend, I find it very interesting. I don't know what you think. I don't know if it makes sense. The timbre of her voice was very, like, it could be in any pop song from today, but at the same time, it has of course a different depth. But the context in which she places her voice is very different.
I actually sort of thought that it could be from an older time too. If I didn't know it was from 2020, I could actually guess that it could be from somewhere in the 90s. It has a 90s sort of sound to me.
Yeah.
And the nice thing, the kind of like positive feeling that that track gave me has to do with, it reminds me of live music basically. It just
Ah.
kind
Yeah.
of like music that you could be hearing kind of in a nice bar or whatever, where there's live music, which rarely happens. It's usually absolutely horrendous music when it is live music.
I know. I know.
Seek out. I mean, if you didn't seek it out, usually it means it's bad. But if there was such a kind of like instance where you walk in and you find good music, it could be one of those.
Mhm.
I think what she does at the beginning with her voice, which she changes. At the beginning, she sings in a certain way and then she changes. What she
Yeah.
at the very beginning sounds very much like somebody else I love, adore, Charlotte Gainsbourg. She
Mm. Mm.
like a bit girly and a bit Jane Birkin and a little bit the Gainsbourg family
Yes. Yes. Yes.
like thing that I like very much. Then she sort of like switches to a more rock sounding kind of like thing afterwards. But yeah, it's very friendly, kind of like you could be playing it in the background when you have friends over and so on. So yeah, there's something convivial about it, which I liked.
Convivial. Yeah.
I'm amazed that I had the exact same thing. I was like, I'm in a city and I'm at like an outdoor beer garden, and there's like this is like the best offering of like the local music scene, and they're like just a great band, and this is what it sounds like. It's wild, but they have really good local bands in St. Louis. I'm sure they do in Memphis. I'm sure they do in Lewisburg, maybe. But I also had the same quality that it was like, this is 90s. And I was thinking like, I was listening with my wife, Jenny, we were listening to and thinking about like Gwen Stefani, who does that same thing where she goes back and forth between it being kind of like teenager, like having this quality to being more rock and roll to like, but that's amazing that we kind of had that similar impression. But Black Hoodie, that's totally, that's like experimental, like 90s music. It again sounds kind of 90s aughts, like early 2000s to me, but now like a cubist version or something where it's all like broken up into weird phrases and it's like experimental and almost what was interesting to me that when you take apart one of these kind of like, I would say like a late 90s style of song like that and make it more experimental with the lyrics and the phrase lengths and the voice timbres and the registers, all that sort of stuff, it begins to take on like theater, which I hadn't thought about, where I start to perceive it as like seeing somebody like in a theater show performing it because it's like more complex or something. And that was something I hadn't thought about until I heard this track, but I'm curious.
Thank you for saying that because this is very theatrical. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I always feel like when I'm listening to the soloist, I feel like I'm actually hearing soliloquy rather than listening to a song. And yeah, yeah,
Does
you're
it, does it get sort of like its inspiration a little bit from something slightly Celtic? Is it trying to kind of like be Celtic-y?
yeah. I mean, they are consciously actually referring back to medieval and Renaissance secular music, definitely Celtic, and the of course like interludes in between. I guess it's violin and saxophone interludes. Sounds so folkish, Celtic
Yeah.
as well. And they actually use a lot of those type of um, sort of let's say like copying some external music into their tracks. They did that a lot in their last concert, which I can't forget. I mean, they have not literal borrowings, but imitations, sort of pastiches of the older time, very old time. So definitely, with the progressive rock, British rock, there was this storytelling bard type of storytelling aspect in the songs, like Jethro Tull, and even Yes is like that. I think there's another Yes component that I found here, so maybe I should have just shared Yes.
It's like
Yeah, but yeah, definitely it becomes more of a theater, and even the sounds start to become theater. The instrumental sounds become, I mean, you start to perceive them as characters in this, around the main character. And the melismas, of course, a lot of melismas that he uses, which is sort of unusual.
For sure. Super unusual. I don't want to cut anybody off, but this next track was my favorite. The Francois Bayou.
I liked it a lot too. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
I think I just love musique concrète, like French electronic music. It just, I don't know why. I can just sampling and playback speed and whatever, I'm like all in. I don't know why, but there's something about that sound world that I just love it. Like I don't even know what these samples are. I mean, they don't even have to be the world's greatest samples, but I will listen. Like I just find something about it so captivating and so beautiful and like haunting, this idea of like looping things and changing the pitch of them. And because you can get all levels of different kinds of harmony and microtonal, whatever, like all sorts of things are just an easy, natural byproduct of that when you take something into that world. And I don't know, I find it just unbelievably interesting.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
I didn't know this person's music at all, which is shocking because I'm going to listen to a ton of it. Like, and I'm going to put it in my syllabi, and I'm going to probably steal some ideas in my own music. And I just really enjoy it.
Mahir, why do we not know him so well? Like as well as we know Varese and so on?
Well, Well, he is actually still he still lives.
Uh,
Uh, he's actually a later generation, and was sort of they were important, but also sort of bad boys of electronic music academic community in Europe, along with Bernard Parmigiani. Uh, and both of them actually, in fact, Francois Bale is the person who coined the term acousmatic music, which is the music that is written to be, that is created to be listened through speakers, not live, but also includes music concrete, the tape, sampling, etc., but also electronic music, all those. So Varese, of course, was in a way doing acousmatic music, and in a way, Francois Bale associated his and Parmigiani's take in dealing with this with Varese, because Varese used both actually the signals and the recorded sound. But yeah, only they were very active in 70s, 80s. This is from 82.
oh, okay.
Then computer music probably took over, and also, you know, how the uh, labels are and things are. They continue to produce, but yeah, this is one of the niche, you know, niche groups or sort of currents in electronic music. But this one actually is behaving so interestingly because the whole thing is like the series of waves, as if you are actually watching an ocean, just, you know, the waves coming in and out. And on that, which is created so successfully because it really is organic. It feels organic, even though it's all electronics. It's so organic that he actually sprinkles all these, you know, all these amazing sound events. And what really captivates me in this type of music, and in a way that became sort of very uh, foundational for my way of thinking and writing music, making music, and listening to music, is like perceiving music as behaviors, one behavior on another, and like motion. There's some sort of sense of motion or multiple sense of motion that starts to either coexist or contrast to each other, conflict with each other. I think this music does that so well.
Yeah, well said.
Did you guys all watch Twin Peaks, the real one, obviously?
I watched just first couple of ones, first couple of episodes.
Probably won't guess what I'm going to say now because this track also kind of like plays back. There are some playbacks, right? I mean, it's like playing it backwards. I mean,
Yeah, reverse playback. Yeah,
reverse playing. Yeah, that plays a very important role in Twin Peaks, and that's why, like, the minute you hear it, the association immediately is there. There's actually a track on the Radiohead's that album also.
mhm.
The it's like the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but yes, all of them always for me go there, and that made me think, like, since you said that it's from the beginning of 80s, and when is it from, Chris? Isn't it also from 80s? Twin Peaks is from 80s, isn't it? Or sort of
Probably late 80s. Yeah.
80s, exactly. I wonder if Angelo Badalamenti actually knew about music concrete and from.
Oh, I'm sure. I bet he did. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's it from the 50s and 60s, and yeah.
Yeah, could be. That album, Radiohead album, of course. I mean, I love all of their albums, but I love that one very much. We actually own it as a record, and the record is gorgeous,
Yeah.
extremely beautiful. Um, but my favorite one from that album is Full Stop. Actually, that's the
Mhm.
one that I always like keep going back to. Burn the
Yeah.
Witch is nice, of course, but that was the single that came out. That was the
Yeah.
first thing that we saw, so I over listened probably. That's why I always go to the other ones that I know a little bit less now. But yeah, I think it's just fantastic.
Yeah.
Collegno you're hearing at the beginning, is it? Like,
Yeah. Conleño, and also the samples are cut and paste, I guess. They are not exactly as they are. You know, Johnny Greenwood is as far as I understand, is a computer music buff. So he goes in and then works with the samples and recomposes them, edits them. So it's a really very amazing sound.
Yeah. No, he's great.
Yeah.
But Tom is also great on his own.
Tom,
He also
he's a genius.
Fantastic, yeah.
Genius songwriter. Like me and I went and saw him in St. Louis a couple of years ago on his solo tour.
Mhm.
Unbelievable, like just unbelievable. I mean, that guy's just a genius. And but this track in particular, they always have great bass sounds. Like there's always some sound, and like this one has this weird vocal like saw wave that sounds like it actually again sounds like this voter synth that we sort of talked about before, which is like this early speech synthesis synthesizer that has this weird vocal quality, but also just,
or not. What is that?
yeah, it's totally awesome though. But yeah, Radiohead, yeah, that's like I'm 40 years old, yeah, and that's like wheelhouse. Radiohead has like been with me in my entire teenage and adult life. It's like
exactly.
I think for our generation, they are the band.
Yes.
Or one of them, definitely.
And I sort of do look down upon people who don't like them. Just what kind of person are you?
I've never seen the full band live though. Have either of you?
Neither. Unfortunately, me neither.
We got to make it happen.
Actually, yeah, really. Yeah.
I was hoping to see them. And apparently, I was just checking that the artwork. I love the artwork too, and that's by Tom York too.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
Talented guy.
Great. On that note, thank you so much, Mahir, for this.
I thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is awesome, man.
I enjoyed
hearing of different places.
Yeah.
Come hang out in St. Louis, man. Like there was actually another St. Louis connection on this playlist. I think it was maybe Ruth Crawford Secret said in her Wikipedia lived in St. Louis at some point when she was a child or something. But I was such a weird this like Mississippi River situation that we're in, me and Mahir.
Oh yes.
There's just so much history in the United States that went up and down this that's like unbelievable and super interesting. But we should get together and do the blues trail. That's what we should do.
Yes, that would be amazing.
Cetiz, come hang out in the sweaty South, and we'll drive up and down and check out where all this stuff happened. It's super interesting. All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.